Hello, welcome back to Search Sean. This is another Chat with Sean episode, of course. And yeah, I'm joined by a good old friend of the show, which obviously I'll get into now and do the introductions. But as you can see, I'm joined by Natalia Witczyk. And I'm sure you know who she is, but just in case you don't, she is an international SEO consultant and SEMrush ambassador. So yeah, welcome back to the show, Natalia. I don't know what number this is. Yeah, it's great to have you. I don't know if it's 2, 3, 4 times now on the show, but
yeah, we've also seen it on different shows, so it's hard to keep count, right?
Yeah, I mean, you really helped me out. I mean, you're one of my first guests, to be fair, back in like last year or something. So yeah, it's good to have you back at this stage. And yeah, just to set some context, so Natalia's been working a lot in China recently, and it's something that most people don't know much about. And to be honest, most people don't know much about China full stop, because we're not really told that much in the Western world and on over there. And I talk about a lot on my channel. I watch a guy called Bald and Bankrupt, and he goes traveling all over the world. Other people as well, like YouTube people, and he goes to China a lot. And I'm just gobsmacked about how advanced it is in technology. The train stations that always like amaze me. And then also on our news episodes I do, I always follow AI robotics and AI stories, and obviously a lot is coming out of China, which is just like incredible, the pace it's going at, the development. So yeah, we're going to get into all that, and obviously how search is evolving in China and stuff as well. So I guess to kick off, what was like the biggest shock for you when you first moved to China, especially in terms of how they use technology from a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, great intro, because there's so many topics around China that we could just talk about. And I think technology is the big one. I'll start with the classic one, which is the payments. Anyone who's been to China probably already knows it, and anyone who's not been probably doesn't imagine how it works. And it's really hard to pay by card anywhere in China, not because they are not technology friendly, because they have their own technology of payments via WeChat or Alipay, which is basically a QR code based system where your mobile phone is your wallet. So there's no need for you to carry anything around in your pocket other than the mobile phone. And literally everywhere is this kind of payment based. So it's even harder to pay cash than mobile payments. And I mean, when I mean everywhere, I mean, you'll have a street vendor selling apples, like sitting on a chair and just on the street, and they accept mobile payments, and they're not very happy about you giving them cash. So it's absolutely everywhere, and people are so digitalized and so mobile focused. It's from another world.
Yeah, I think that YouTuber, he went to a train station, they had one of those massage chairs, and he was trying to use it, and yeah, the only form of payment was the scanning the QR code and Alipay or whatever in his so
QR codes everywhere, and for a foreigner, it's actually good news, because you can get your morning coffee, your breakfast, your lunch through your app without speaking to the waiter or the person at the counter. Actually, the coffee thing is blowing my mind still to this day, because I would still order it at home and then pick it up, just scan the code on the checkout, just take it, and it would take seconds, and the coffee was hot and waiting for me, and it was perfect because I could specify how big of a size, syrups, do I want a straw in the back or I don't want it? Like every single item I could personalize, and with more expanded products you could order, like if you had a bubble tea or something that is very, very specific to your taste, you literally go and pick the percentage of sweetness you want there. So you can personalize every single product the way you want it. And there's a very clear interface to do it. So even as a foreigner, it's quite easy to do and quite decently changes your life for better, because you don't have to know the language to interact with people every day and, use the services that are available there.
Yeah, I suppose I'm going to get into it straight away because it's quite a deep, hard-hitting subject. But why do you think, like, obviously there are places in China that, from what I've seen, aren't as developed as a lot of it. But it seems like compared to like UK, for example, they are very much advanced. How have they got there? And UK have us lagging so far behind? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think it's a very good metaphor, also related to the UK and the rest of the world, and how the plumbing works in the UK. How you have the two taps just because the pressure and the pipes were not designed to make it all one in the first place. But UK was the first one to have, tubes implemented on most of the buildings. So the system for water supply was just advanced at the time, and then it stayed behind for that reason. And I think China was so behind until it wasn't, and it just skipped the whole process. Skipped really the PC era. Doesn't say they don't use the PCs, but most people at home, they don't even have like a personal computer. For them, computer is work, and at home, it's just a mobile phone. That's one device they need for everything. So they skipped the PC, personal laptop era, and they went mobile first, head on. And that's how the whole ecosystem adapted as well. So it started off later. It took all the learnings from other systems that already were in place in other countries, and then it just made it better and more accessible, I guess.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can go down that. It's really interesting. Obviously, you go way back to the Egyptians and the Romans and everything. Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, that the UK, we're still using like the underground system. Okay, they've done a few new lines now, but they're still like Victorian. We're using a lot of Victorian-based technologies still, even to this day. And it's like,
Because we from scratch than to replace existing stuff. It always is. So when you have a clean slate and you're building from scratch, you can go bigger and be bolder. I don't say it's just easier because you have nothing, but it's also one of the elements. And then they had a bold government that just went ahead and implemented all the plans. But that's also now I don't want to get too political because, we are not talking politics here, we're talking search. But it's always intertwined, right? I mean, as a party that rules without change, they can see things through. They can make 5-year plans and 20-year plans and have them implemented. When you have a 4-year rotation and 4-year if you're lucky, because in our recent democracies, not many governments stay in power for the whole term, you're not going to build huge project that's going to change the infrastructure of the entire country, right? You don't have enough time to do it. So you're always going to try to put small fixes on big problems instead of redesign and rethink everything.
Yeah. And like I say, I don't mind going down that route, but we keep it light. But even if you look at like the US and the UK, we privatize things and people like to keep things secret and not get everyone involved. So that reduces the amount of growth you can have because only a certain amount of people get involved in the project, and there's only a certain amount of budget and limitations where if you have everyone involved and it's one big push to get there, you got a lot better chance of evolving together and, like I say, consistency. When Westerners talk about China, they often misunderstand, how it digital ecosystem actually works. So you've mentioned some stuff like with the mobile and stuff. What do you think other things that we get wrong, perhaps that we don't know about, that is quite interesting that you see?
Oh, so this is a really good question because I've thought about it a lot recently. We've only recently in the West woken up to the idea that the user journey is not as simple and as easy to pan out as we thought and we believed and we sold our clients to believe. So, with those 4 steps, 4 pillars of marketing, inbound marketing, and how they go through all those phases in order, right? And they touch on different channels. I don't think that ever was the case, but we like to simplify it. Now, in China, the user journey has been way more complex for longer, and I think they've always realized that. So it's funny how Westerners always think, oh, WeChat is like a search engine. Do you do WeChat SEO? It's like, no, because it's not a search engine, so you don't SEO it. But you do optimize it, and you do improve it. But it's a completely different touch point in any user journey, and it's an important one. Because WeChat, I think the best way to equate it to is to WhatsApp, but on steroids. And actually, WhatsApp has based many of their functionalities on WeChat, not the other way around. Because WeChat has been around for a very long time. And WeChat integrates anything from chat messaging to business accounts, to social media videos, to map functionality where you can see local businesses, to payment systems, right? So you can purchase within the same platform, but it doesn't mean it replaced Google or Baidu in China's case. It really made things more complicated for the marketers. And it also meant that WeChat is a different channel that mixes offline and online. It's another channel, of course, but it's very much QR code based, which means any offline presence of the brand has got WeChat reference in the form of a QR code. And I think in the West, we think about either online or offline. We don't really mix that much, both of those channels, and we don't really have the same people involved in decision making in both. It's very, very separate, almost working in a silo. Now, every campaign in China, every print ad will have a online QR code reference. So there's always the interaction between the both. And I think for that reason, Chinese marketing has kind of gotten over the acquisition and acquisition models and understanding the data the same way as we still want to hold on to in the West. Because they know there's too many interactions in a user's life, offline or online, that they cannot simply track. So obviously they do the best they can, but they're not so, attached to that concept. Now, I've opened a lot of topics, so please pick one because we have a lot to talk about.
That is fascinating. I do think that is definitely a problem in generally Western sort of marketing. Yeah. I do think that disconnect, like you say, with the companies I've worked with or worked for, it's natural, because they're doing outdoor advertising or whatever, they don't see any connection between potentially, again, they might send people to a website, but they don't see that connection. It's a whole separate thing, but it is all connected, as you say. I'm very interested about the different main platforms in China. I've heard all about them, and obviously they come up in all different kinds of reports that I see, but like WeChat, like you kind of mentioned, it's basically a digital operating system. How does living inside a super app, as they say, change your expectations of the internet? That's the question put forward. But yeah, how is it different to what we have in the West, I guess?
Okay, so I think it's a good starting point to understand that the first layer of WeChat is just like WhatsApp. You even see some similarities in the UX and the design. WeChat looks a bit older, but they just don't update the design. They don't see the need to, because they have so many, faithful users. There's no need to keep it up again and again. But the first layer is the same. The first view you have is your chats. And it can be a chat with your friends. It can be a group. It can be an official account you follow. Almost like the new features in WhatsApp, which are basically official accounts. And also you can have a bit more there because you can have people that you send money to. You can have local businesses you've connected with. So for example, my Chinese medicine lady who was giving me Chinese massage with a wooden stick, she would be on my WeChat and she would send me weekly or monthly updates on the pricing and basically engage with me this way. So it's very much integrated in day-to-day communications of small businesses. Then you have a whole different section, which is pretty much like TikTok, because you have a whole video section where you have short videos that you can scroll for hours. It's very interesting because the users from the West who install WeChat on their phone won't see that section. Only Chinese mobile phone number verified users will. I had both. I bought myself a Chinese phone, have a full immersed experience. So while I was usually using my Western phone, I was always testing the apps and seeing how the experience is through a Chinese lens. And it was different because the WeChat app there is more expanded. And then you have the whole, and there's also like a mini blogging section, almost like you would equate it to Twitter, I guess, in the good old days where you can just share your quick message with the world. So there's a lot of social media layers on top of the basic chat functionality. But I think the most interesting one is the one where you can open what it's called mini program, which is essentially an app developed within WeChat ecosystem. So any small business or large business, any coffee chain, any e-commerce shop, typically would, on top of their own app, will have a WeChat version of the app. And that's what you do by scanning the code. So with WeChat, you scan the code through that ecosystem, and it pops up in your app. You don't have to install because it's preloaded with WeChat functionalities. And that's how you order your food in basically every restaurant. Order your coffee, get a taxi, anything you need from services section, you can do through those mini apps. So it's almost like, as you said, an operating system for businesses to have their own web experience, which is not a website, right? So you will not find small local businesses owning a website. That's just obsolete. They will have a mini app that people can purchase through. And that's how it works. So you literally don't leave WeChat if you don't want to for dates, because that's anything you'll need from the internet can be found there.
That's pretty crazy, actually. Like in the UK, like you've got, that 6 or 7 different apps just for food or stuff doing the same sort of job. You got to go Just Eat or Uber Eats or Deliveroo or whatever. Yeah, that's really interesting. How does that fit against the uptake of AI models like DeepSeek, I guess? Because obviously OpenAI, for example, are trying to fit in all these different apps and stuff within the model itself. In DeepSeek trying to do that kind of thing as well. I have used it, not for a while, so I'm not sure how it's advanced.
Yeah, so DeepSeek has signed a lot of agreements, and it's actually powering a lot of other systems. So on top of having their own kind of product, they also, for example, power part of Baidu's, which is China's Google, and they power Baidu's AI quick features, AI summaries similar to AI overviews. So DeepSeek is not just, the household name for AI. It is. Any Chinese person I've met uses DeepSeek. Very happy with that. And they 100% believe that's the best product, just because it does phrase the answers and the results in a better way in Chinese than any other system from the West. Of course, it's been designed on this training data set. But also, it's behind the scene within other tools. So DeepSeek powers a lot of different models that sometimes, it's not even sometimes very transparent to know when DeepSeek is playing their part and when Baidu is using their own system, which they also own. So that's very interesting. I mean, one thing that we have to say about China, we can talk about the progress as much as we want. We can't talk about it without mentioning that transparency about which companies play part and use their data and stuff like that. It's nowhere near the level we have in the West. So monopolies are very common and actually encouraged by the government. I mean, imagine if today we wanted to replicate WeChat's payment model and have it introduced in Europe. No chance European governments will just agree for one big player to take over the whole market, right? So there's always a different sides to every argument. So whatever makes them so advanced also can be attributed to the fact they have very strong monopolies. It's just a couple of companies owning all those digital products and actually signing agreements with governments to make things work better for the country overall.
It's true. I mean, obviously, some people may argue about Google and what they get away with and what they can do, but,
we haven't allowed Google to run our metro system ticketing, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Exactly. So at least, I don't say Google is not a monopoly. Actually, the ruling has been, it is. I don't think they've been penalized enough, but at least there's been an investigation. At least there's been a question put on the table if they are. And in China, it's not a question to be asked,
Yeah, no, that's fair, geez. And I'm totally naive about all this, but in China, can you use Google and can you actually use it? And also, do people use like ChatGPT and stuff in China, or is it literally like that's not even an option in their app store or whatever?
Yeah, so Google is not available in China at all. But it's one of the few brands that some people in China might be like aware of, might have heard the name, because Google entered China very briefly over a decade ago, and then they decided to exit. They just couldn't comply with the local laws. So they calculated that it's just not worth it for them to stay in this market. I mean, the market penetration was very low, so it just the numbers didn't add up. So there's two groups of websites. Either websites that don't mind being in China, but Chinese government is proactively banning, or companies that decided to exit China with some of their products that are just basically not interested in destroying the relationship they have with Chinese government. So to give examples, Google exited the company, but they still have got offices in China. They work on Google Cloud, they have developers. So they kind of politely not make it easier for users to access their resources, even if they could. So you can't access that without a VPN. No Google products. I'm in Gmail, I'm in Calendar, I'm in Google Docs. Nothing works unless you have a VPN connection. Then there's Microsoft, which is present in China, has been for many years. And you can access Microsoft Bing, but not the same Western version as we use. It's reduced, essentially censored version for China. So when you enter on your domain bing.com, you are redirected to the Chinese version. It works perfectly fine. For most searches, it's really great, both for English and Chinese speaking searches. However, Microsoft decided to exit with LinkedIn. They used to have LinkedIn available to Chinese users, but they've simply decided actually last year only that it's just too expensive to moderate LinkedIn the way they're supposed to comply with the local law. So they decided to shut down that product. WhatsApp doesn't officially work, but sometimes casually I will receive a notification without being connected to a VPN. So I think what WhatsApp is trying to do is circumvent some of those issues the way they can, basically connect you if they can, and just hope for the best, because they don't have any business with China at the moment. I mean, Meta never did, you know? Facebook not available, Wikipedia not available. But it's a funny thing, because it's not something those users are seeking. They're not sat there at the computer typing domain names out of their heads, checking if they can access this, you know? That's just not on their radar. So maybe Facebook is because it's such an old established platform. They might have seen it somewhere and they're like, oh, let's see if I can access this, but they mostly don't care. They don't know anything about OpenAI. That's not even a product for them. Like ChatGPT is not an option, because it wouldn't, if someone who lived abroad and has a lot of connection to media from other languages, they might be aware of it. But otherwise, people are really not that interested in the foreign internet experience.
No, it's really interesting. It's like a whole new world. Like it literally is like, I'm so like talking and learning a lot. I did not know half of that stuff, so that's really interesting. And when you say obviously Baidu,
Baidu, yeah.
Baidu versus Google, you know, but what's the key differences between the two? Like, how do you find the search experience from there?
Yeah, so we've talked a bit about WeChat, and I think that's really good starting point to understand Baidu's position, because Baidu is not the first stop for any user journey, right? It's not like Google for ads, where we Google so often. It became a verb. For Baidu is an important search engine. It could be equated to Google's position, but in China, but it's just not that present in people's lives. They much more depend on social media and, you know, QR codes and stuff like that. It's more B2B channel, or more channel for older people. It's not so trendy anymore. And it's very dated. And you can see that by even the fact that when you look at the documentation for the webmasters, some of it has not been updated. It's like 2011. But it's also because they don't really change that much. They don't stay there informing webmasters on how to, you know, rank yourself. They've always had this dominant position in the market. So they always tell businesses to run ads first. Like SEO is not a feasible channel if you're starting off as a new brand in China. You have to invest in ads. And the limited space on every SERP actually proved that, because SERPs in Baidu are just staffed with their own product and their own results, their own image service, their own music service, their own Wikipedia kind of alike version. So anything you would search for, like top of the funnel information, there's no brands or bloggers just showing up. It's always their own products, which makes SEO really hard. But it's not impossible. And if you are in B2B space, you definitely want to optimize for your core keywords and for your brand name, because it's also not a given that as your own brand expands to China, you'll show up in Baidu search.
Nice.
A couple of differences, because that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So Baidu algorithm predominantly bases itself on the same premise. So there are links, there is content, there's quality, there's probably some user interaction, but it's never been exposed how much of user interaction counts into the algorithm. But definitely links have a huge weight. But what's different about on-page and links is that it's not a positive thing to be a huge international website for Baidu. because they really just work in one market and one language, which is simplified Chinese for China, mainland. So the more noise you introduce with other versions of your website, the less likely they will be to crawl and index your version of the site in Chinese, just because they don't see you as targeting that specific market in such a strong way. So what many new brands do, even Apple.com did that, is they launch a separate website just for China on a different domain. And it's not to say that the domain has to be China domain. It can help, but it's not necessary. It's not a requirement. What's important is that you have monolingual domain just targeting China. So then Baidu doesn't waste any resources crawling everything you have and can focus on what's actually relevant to them. So the best practice for now, that's been for many years and continues to be, is to launch a completely separate website. You can link to your version in different languages, but you shouldn't have a subfolder structure where everything is stuck together on one .com domain, because that's just not going to be helpful and efficient for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you would still suggest that SEO is still possible. It's just not as easy maybe as it is here.
I mean,
Not as it's easy.
In China, yeah. Never easy, but easier, yeah. What's interesting in China is that SEO agencies are typically like integrated agencies. So you have SEO and PPC teams really working together. And I think that really shows that you have to have both pillars. Typically, PPC teams are bigger and SEO are there just to make sure everything is smooth. But technical SEO still has got its value, because any crawler can get lost in messed up crawling and issues that happen. And there is always the branded experience part where you just have to show up for given keywords because that they are supposed to be yours. And then you still have to make that work. So I would say SEO has got value. It's limited compared to other channels, but it's still there. And especially for big organizations, they like to have someone just looking out for the common issues and fixing that. Maybe not so much like you wouldn't launch an affiliate business and then just starting a website and just black hat it out to rank first overnight. That just doesn't happen in Baidu so easily. But you can definitely dominate search for your brand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously I've never been to China. I only watch it through videos and stuff, but it does seem like, you know, for example, in the UK, like our high streets are just dying. Like there's basically no one really goes into shops anymore that often. It's all, a lot of stuff is done via Google, via online, and that kind of thing. Obviously the economy on its knees doesn't help. And obviously the same, I would think, in America to a degree. But in China, it seems like with the apps and stuff, with, you know, it seems like in store is still like a thing. Like there's still like a lot of shops and people still go out to shops and interact in that way. Or are they still buying things online a lot as well?
Well, the online purchases have been really skyrocketing. And now also quite a big crisis is kicking in China. So consumers are becoming more price conscious as well. But what's interesting is that Asia, where kind of social life circulates around shopping malls. And there's a big, you know, the best restaurants you'll find in China will be based in a mall on 7th floor. Something you'd never think of in the UK or in Spain. That's just not how it works. And it's fine dining. I mean, I've been to a Michelin star restaurant in a shopping mall. I was shocked. And also amazed because the food was amazing. So the function of a shopping mall is it's social and it's family oriented as well, and not just shopping oriented. And also shopping malls became more of an experience places. So you will have like ceramics workshops, like an ice skating ring in a shopping mall, or you'll have a dance class, so like a dance studio. So they're also rethinking them because they built so many shopping malls that they have to rethink how they use those spaces, and those spaces are getting second life. And I think especially for luxury brands that entered China 20 years ago, like all your Pradas and Chanels, which you can find in every, in every city, there's just too many of those shops and people are not buying anymore. They're going to have to probably back off at some point because it's not going to make sense by numbers, just stay there. And I think those spaces will reinvent themselves.
Yeah, I saw that in that guy I was watching. He went to a hotel. He had quite a nice hotel, but like you said, it was inside of a shopping center, and he had to go up to a lift in like the 15th floor or something. And it was just
Yeah.
really random, like inside of. Doesn't even look like there's a hotel there, and then you go in and it's like a 5-star hotel or something else. And then, like you say, you don't even see many people. You just scan in a QR code and go in your room and
Well,
great.
imagine my shock to see a ice skating ring in the middle of summer in China, which is 35, 40 degrees, in a shopping mall on the second or third floor. I mean, that would never happen in Europe just for like security reasons and like safety of, building and structure and whatnot. Insane.
Great. What kind of obviously we talked about a few of the different platforms that are big out there, and we know obviously TikTok, all the controversy around that and in America and stuff. But what else are they kind of using, and what's kind of taking off there that might potentially we might see variations of in Europe soon?
There's so many social media platforms that are trying to kind of bite out a bit of TikTok success. There's a lot of quick video based platforms. So WeChat itself had it integrated. I myself used one called Little Red Book. That's the newest translation of the name of the app. And it's almost like a quick messaging versus video or selfie social media. But what is really interesting as well is like when we think about China, we typically think about the top 2 cities we know, Beijing, Shanghai, maybe something else comes to mind. But China is really separated and divided into different tiers of cities and locations. And financially, it's not doing the same everywhere, right? Because there's parts of the country that just drive the growth. And there are parts of the countries that are really rural, really not there yet. So what's really interesting is that there's some social media platforms. Now, I don't remember the name of that one, but I read about it a couple of months ago that's trying to target specifically rural areas because TikTok is considered a bit snobbish and a bit too much of a big city success life. And that's not the story of so many Chinese people in the suburbs or in the countryside. So there's platforms that try to target different segments of the society. And I find it fascinating because, farm life is very different, right, than modern city life in China. So I also think that segmentation and that experience based platforms will be so much more on trend.
There are other kind of search engines.
There is a couple other search engines in Baidu. There's 360. There's an e-commerce search engine called Shenma. So there's a few other search engines, but they're not stealing the thunder right now. They're not that on the rise just because social media is just taking over. But I think I want to say one thing to that because I think it's also important to put some of my thoughts that I'm just vomiting anyway into context. Because obviously a lot happens in China in 6 months, so you have a lot of those ideas. But I think what's really important to understand about the Chinese consumer is that the Chinese consumer is really overwhelmed as it comes to cognitive noise. China is very loud, and people say, "Oh, it's so quiet and clean." It is where you go to tourist places where it's taken care of, but in most places it's really loud. There's a lot of stimuli everywhere. Apartment building. I was living in a random apartment building in one of the districts of one of the cities in China called Tianjin. So I wasn't part of like foreigner enclave where people just live among expats, right? I hate the word, but I have to use it because we know what I mean. So I was living among Chinese people. I was actually the only foreigner in the building. And every single lift, we had 2 lifts, had a video screen with ads 24/7, both of them. Then outside, when you were waiting for the lifts to come, you had one huge screen on top, one display screen that was just rotating, poster ads, and another screen on the right, all of them with noise, with sound. You leave the apartment block, lights everywhere. It's beautiful, but it's also overwhelming. It's a lot of stimuli outside. And then any metro station, ads, screens, information 24/7. So customers are overwhelmed with information. So what Chinese communications has figured out is just to simplify that cognitive overload. So I think one of the reasons why the search engines aren't on the rise in China is because there's certain load related to making a decision which choice you want to take, which is the exact result from top 10 that you want to pick. So people are turning to AI or social media because the choices are made for them. And I think in China it came first just because the overload was bigger. But also what the advertisers figured out is that when they show you a video ad in your list and you're tired and you don't know what's happening anymore because you had a long day, they also on the bottom of the screen show you a search box and they tell you where to search for and what to search for to find that product. That's mostly B2C, consumer brands, fast-moving goods. So you have a KitKat ad. They made a new flavor. And they show you exactly the search box, what to type, and what e-commerce platform to use to find that and order it home, essentially. So it's really fitting into customers' chair and understanding what they need from me to buy. Like, how can I make their choice easier? And China has really nailed that. And I think that's also a next level combination of offline and online. And we will soon have to tell our users how to find us to be successful. Otherwise, too much noise, too many platforms will just make it impossible.
I mean, you kind of, I was going to ask about their research journeys and stuff. And yeah, that's really, really fascinating. Like, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, I think, even here, like there's so much. If you watch YouTube, like you're bombarded with adverts, every minute. And, like you say, you got digital adverts are taking off here. And, but if I ever saw Japanese TV, for example, or Chinese TV, you see all this text on the screens that scroll across, and you're like, wow, that's a lot to take in. In terms of obviously here, a lot of the stuff is about engineering, like GEO, whatever we want to call it, AI search optimization. Are people trying to do that in China to try and, with DeepSeek and stuff, are they trying to do the same?
Yeah. First, people are offering first courses or services as agencies for AI. And the thing is, it's as much of a black box, it's not more of a black box there than it is here. So I don't think anyone has yet figured it out. But there are some first tools to test it on scale, and people connect their APIs and run those, daily queries or prompts or whatever you want to call them to kind of test. But the thing is, Chinese clients, and now I mean clients as our consultants clients, Chinese businesses that invest in SEO, they want fast results. So they will invest in SEO, but they want promises. They want fast results. So they're more willing to invest in ads on top of SEO or invest more in ads. And it's the same with the AI stuff. They're willing to pay some part of their budget to test something, but they really will put their money where the results are. So there's not huge interest yet just to go and invest huge amounts of money on tools that are not proving ROI yet, right? Because with those AI visibility tools, it's really hard to get value out of it, I think. And in China, it's the same. It's small attempts to try to measure it, but no real monetization yet. So it's still very, very early days. But I think because DeepSeek is so much cheaper to run, they might be faster to implement some kind of analytics, potentially. Potentially, they might be quicker to implement ads within their interface. So they might be faster in providing marketeers with what they need to actually make DeepSeek a new channel. Potentially, that's something that Google will take longer to do. As we see, they've not introduced anything specific to Search Console, even the filter for AI overviews, not to mention Gemini, right? So I think China might be ahead, but they are not there yet.
Yeah, how integrated is AI into everything? Obviously, you talked about WeChat and stuff. Is it, over here it's been trying to be integrated into every single thing we do, but is it the same there?
It's more because you have it integrated on the app level, but you have it on the device level. So when you're buying a new phone in China now, and the one I bought is Oppo, but there is Honor, there's a lot of good Chinese cheap brands for smartphones. The whole operating system is AI operated already, and every single screen you see, you can directly feed to your AI. So, I mean, you could equate it to Google Pixel, I guess, but I think Google Pixel is not there yet as far as the Chinese operating systems are.
Yeah, and like the cars, I was actually tempted to buy one. I didn't go in the end, but BYD, like the brand is like their cars are all equipped with AI and stuff. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
And like I say, the robotic stuff, I'm so intrigued by the robotic stuff with AI, and it's so like advanced in China, like with the dogs and then the humanoid ones, like the other day where they brought it out on stage and everyone was like, they kept saying how real it was. It's not it's just a person in a suit. So they brought it back out and they took it all apart, like the leg, to show it's actually a real robot. Yeah, it's crazy how like they're so into it, you know, compared to obviously we got Tesla, you know, you got Elon doing some stuff, but yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. So I've been to a technology trade show in Beijing literally a month ago today when we were recording this. And there were some robotic dogs running around. And it's crazy because the mimics, the behavior of a dog, robotic dog, is so similar to a real dog. I immediately went on my knees and started to talk to it in my dog voice. I didn't even think it through. It was just so natural to me. And then I realized the dog's interface doesn't even have camera to see me. It's just programmed to run around and act like a dog, but it doesn't interact with the people. So I felt so silly because it just ignored me and ran off and did the same thing again and again to other people just around, you know, but without any interaction. And I think for now it's just like a fun game element. But really soon, because China has got huge issue with the aging society. I mean, as every society in the world does, but China on top of that, it might really become a big thing for elder care, for, you know, medicine, dosage and, you know, things like that. The small tasks that will be really useful for the quality of elder's life. I think that will be like a first step because the money also will be there because, you know, busy kids will not have time to do the caregiving full time. So they'd rather buy a robot that's going to do it for you. Yeah, there's a lot that's going to happen in this field.
Yeah, well, what I've seen, it's so advanced. I don't think it's too long where, I mean, in China, they are already selling them in terms of Western prices. They're not that expensive, you know. But yeah, I just say on my show, like, would you have one, you know, in the house? Because there's that humanoid one that can go and do the dishes. It can do all the cleaning and stuff. And I personally would give it a go, but I don't think people in my house would want that. And it would freak me out a bit if you know, where does it sleep and, you know, stuff. And they can recharge themselves, which is also like,
yeah,
a bit weird.
There's been a very good experience. That was many years ago in the UK, Humans. I loved it. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of, you know, for European brand, if they want to enter the market in China, like tomorrow, what's the one mistake you see so often that European or, you know, Western companies make where you would, apart from obviously you said you should create a separate website, is there any other sort of mistakes that they make?
Well, it's a funny one, but it happened to me several times. So when I moved to China, kind of the word spread around and I was posting from my LinkedIn about China and people clicked on that. So someone heard somewhere that an SEO specialist for Chinese market is needed and they got me in touch. And that happened twice in different companies, different situations. But both of the people essentially said the same thing to me. We're not translating the website to Chinese yet. We'll see about that. But maybe we can do a few things in Baidu. And if it works and it starts to make money, then we'll invest it back and just make the website really good for Baidu. And I'm like, how do you plan to show up in a market that is Chinese speaking, full stop? There's no intent there to maybe attract foreign users in China. No, it's Chinese people that they want to sell to. And I think this is kind of a naive approach towards, let's see if it sticks. And China is not like that. It used to be like this many years ago for a very short time when Chinese people had so much money and wanted so many European luxury products. They were willing to maybe risk spending money somewhere on a premium product. But that was a very short time and you still needed your translation to be done. Like it didn't just happen, on its own. So I think you have to be really serious about China. You need your market research. You need your competitor research. And you have to understand that whatever you're selling, it has to bring unique value to the Chinese customer, because probably there's already a product like this, but cheaper and more adjusted to Chinese tastes, right? Every market has got their own flavors that they prefer. So you'd have to understand if you're bringing in something to the table or you're just trying to sell it, like thinking that because it's European, it's Western, it's going to bring the value. And that's usually not the case.
Yeah, we've seen that even when it's British going to America, for example, and they flopped because they just don't do the market research, And
Absolutely.
I'm sure doing the jump from Britain or America to China is a whole different ball game. And yeah, I think that makes sense. And how much do they have an appetite, if at all, for because in Britain we are kind of like, we get quite excited about a brand that isn't British a lot of the time. I don't know why, but we get quite excited for, like a TikTok or something comes along, or like a BYD or whatever. It's like doing quite well. Or American brands obviously are like dominant in Britain, but in China, what is like the uptake in terms of Western brands?
Yeah, so maybe good starting point to answer your question is talking briefly about fast food chains. So McDonald's and KFC are everywhere, but KFC found their own way to give their own flavor to the Chinese brand because they have their own K-coffee, and they're actually more famous for coffee than chicken. McDonald's became big just because it was a cultural journey. So people went to McDonald's to try a taste of America, because whatever makes fast food amazing in the West is the price and the convenience. But Chinese food is already cheap and convenient. So McDonald's couldn't compete on that same level. That wouldn't make any sense. So they brought this cultural kind of insight. And same with KFC in the beginning. They were like, that's how we eat chicken, with hands. And people were like, hands? There's even like a video from like the 90s when an executive from KFC is showing Chinese people how to eat chicken properly. So now when you order chicken in KFC, you get like gloves and like, wet wipe and that, so you can actually get into the cultural aspect of it, right? But for the first time, McDonald's started closing some of their franchises in China. Not on a big scale yet. It's not like they're disappearing from there. But it usually is a bad sign that they even close one because they never open them in locations that wouldn't be profitable in the first place. So I think that kind of aspect of cultural interest has dried out. And also now the thing with America, it's really impacting the consumers' interest in, supporting a brand. Starbucks is closing some of their own locations as well in China. They're very widespread, but I don't think it's going to last for long because there's so many better counterparts in China that are cheaper and make the service quicker and just more digital, really. So you can sell people on the experience bit. I think Chinese consumers are very traditional, so they want their wine to be red and French. So when I brought gifts from Europe to China to my colleagues, I asked my boss to tell me what wine to bring, and I am a big wine drinker, white wine. And I was like, how about white wine? And he's like, no one wants white wine in China. It has to be red. The tradition part, let's say the top of every flavor you want, that should be the one that they go for. So I think if you want to sell products, they have to be the best in the category and really naturally related. Maybe don't experiment with new flavors and new products in China. Make them as traditional as you can. That would be my guess.
Yeah, that makes sense, to be fair. I'd see if got one more topic we could finish off on. So what lessons from your time in China most shapes how you think about the future of search globally? I guess the future of technology, artificial intelligence as well. you kind of gave some insights, but where do you think, say, this time next year, things would have advanced in China?
So I think the biggest lesson is this fragmented user journey. And my trip to China changed my mind on something big. I absolutely hated when people said TikTok SEO. I hated it. But now I can see it as one of the futures. But there's many futures. There will be many directions. So TikTok style SEO, it doesn't have to be TikTok, but video kind of discoverability. That will be one element of it. AI discoverability. Search within specific platforms, which is bad news for healthy competition because we will have more of the same players everywhere. So search within Amazon for e-commerce and search for that. And then Shopify going with their own agentic search, right? So it will be fragmented into platforms rather than channels. And I think it will be a really difficult thing to figure out where your users really are and how they are finding out about you. And I think it will take many smart heads, not just SEOs, but people from different disciplines. So I think the future of digital marketing is mixing teams and mixing approaches and getting the visual and the textual together. So it all makes sense together and it is the best representation of every brand. So I think finally we can break up the silos we have and we will have to collaborate to make a really comprehensive marketing campaign that's going to translate to every single channel. So that will be a big challenge. There will be big budgets because it will be expensive to come up with something really good. But I think the biggest brands will and can afford it and will have to do it to stay afloat. That's my prediction.
It's great. And I've tried to be like a sponge and take everything in because you've taught me so much about China just in this hour. It's unreal. Finally, what's the kind of like pricing around paid search? Obviously, marketing generally in China, we know in the West, like the prices are going up and up in terms of like pay-per-click and, that kind of thing. Is it quite expensive in China as well? How do they do their pricing model? Is it similar? Oh.
The pricing is going up, but it's not as bad as the West. People always complain about the price because it's gone up in the last years. But I think it's really interesting and also important to understand how micro-targeting really has to be in place for China. Because you always have to target by cities, districts, people with physical, marketers with physical presence of their business. They will always look around specific, zip codes and areas. And there's a lot of remarketing tactics about, any contact with QR code or with a shop location. So they really have to be more selective about who they target because the population is just so big. They just cannot cope for the best and just pick a keyword, right? And I think also that will be a lesson for us, just to make the targeting so much smoother. We don't spend money on wasted effort.
Yeah, that's interesting. I could talk about this a long time, but I was trying to, as you can see, probably why I'm mumbling a lot. I was trying to think of questions on the spot, but there's so many. I'm trying to work out in my brain what to say. But yeah, thank you so much today. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you for the questions. China is fascinating to me. So anyone who asks me about it has to be prepared. It's got to keep me an hour and I'll just share all those ideas. I think I also have to kind of organize them myself because it's also fresh and so new. I think I'm going to be squeezing out more and more and hopefully prepare more materials to speak at conferences and such in a way that makes sense. It's just a lot of random facts.
No, I love it.
More happy.
Yeah, you should be like anyone who works in marketing should be trying to learn as much as they can from all different places. And China is such a big market and such a big, global economy that you can't ignore it. Even though they try to a lot of the time in the West. But yeah, I really appreciate your time and yeah, hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, likewise.